Hey everyone, not sure who's joining today, but I'm going to give us a few minutes because we're going to go live in a couple of seconds. Um, but I welcome everybody aboard today. Looking forward to sharing my insights on mastering AI defense and zero security architect. So we are live. Let's talk about that. Welcome everyone. I'm Michelle Novak, founder of Cardinal Byte Cybersecurity Risk and Management Company. Today, we're living in a time where a single click can end a company. Today isn't about theory. It's about building a practical, invisible fortress around your business. The key takeaways for today is cybersecurity is a proactive defense, not a reactive fix. So I want everybody to focus on that today as we go through this journey together. Just a couple of housekeeping rules. I'm going to ask anybody that joins, please keep your video on and your audio off. Okay, all questions will be answered. Please put them in the chat. And at the end, we'll certainly review any questions that you have today. I look forward to working with all of you and let's have some fun. So, we have 3 missions today: understanding the new AI threats, building zero trust armor, and looking at the survival stats that prove why this matters today. We are moving from a high-level threat to specific actionable solutions. This is what we're going to cover today. We're going to cover the AI threat defense, how to spot robots and deepfakes before they steal your money. We're going to talk about the zero trust armor, building a hotel-style security layout where one broken lock doesn't lose the whole building. Then I'm going to go into survival statistics and compliance, the hard numbers on why this matters, and the step-by-step checklist to keep you legally safe. So without any further ado, let's begin. Before we begin, though, I want to talk about the reality and the current state that we're actually in. With the rise of AI-driven hacks, we're seeing an unforeseeable drive to keep up and protect data. The truth of the matter is 60% of small businesses fail after a hack. In the 2026 threat landscape, you don't have days to react, you have minutes. It needs to start with rotation and monitoring immediately. Your shield is active. Keep it polished, right? We're going to talk about the cyber shield and things that you can do. But let's talk about statistics here, right? The global breach data from May 2026, the average cost today, as of Q2 2026, is about 5.3 million, and it has surged. This is driven by the hyperspeed of AI automation exfiltration. And what I mean by exfiltration, because I like to keep it down, is when data is actually exited your actual company. That's what we mean by when we talk about exfiltration. We have the deep fake vector for the first time, synthetic identity theft, and AI voice impersonation have surpassed phishing as the primary entry point for corporate breaches. This is critical. And that's why we're doing this training today. It's free. It's for anybody out there who really needs to get a good grounding and understanding. Maybe you don't have an internal IT team. Maybe you're just a DIY type of compliance company, and that's okay, right? But we're here to help you build that awareness. And that's why it's important that you understand what we're teaching here today. The speed of attack in 2024 hackers took to move laterally in 2026 is driven really by AI-driven malware, and it can map and encrypt a network in under 15 minutes. That is substantial. It's substantial in today's world. You know, reconnaissance, or what we used to call reconnaissance, where hackers had to go dig, find information, could take months, even years, to finally get access to your system, understand who you are, and then, deploy an attack. Now it's within seconds and minutes. I want you to think about that. And I want you to think about what your security and cybersecurity posture looks like today. There are a lot of mandates out there. There are a lot of different industries that need to comply with different factors when we talk about cybersecurity. But the truth of the matter is cybersecurity is simple if you make it simple and you make it matter, right? You have to build in a trust factor, and you have to hire the right people to help you. And if you don't have that, You need to, especially in today's world where the loss and expenses and fines are doubling. Let's talk about the historical context here, right? From this year alone, the Stryker and Netherlands incidents. The Stryker attack, they faced a massive ransomware attack that crippled global operations. It wasn't just a digital lock, it impacted the delivery of life saving medical devices. I want you to think about that. The lesson: if it can happen to a multi-million dollar medical leader, you're a small business. Isn't it too boring to hit? No, it's not. You are attacked and targeted always. Remember that. The Netherlands dam, we call it Seuss attack. This was a critical infrastructure attack. Hackers targeted sluice gates and water management systems in the Netherlands. This was a cyber physical attack where code results in actual physical flooding. The lessons: we weren't just protecting files, we were protecting physical safety and infrastructure when this happens. The truth of the matter is small businesses are targeted at 51% of cyber attacks. And they target small to medium businesses. Organizations need to close the loop on AI defenses. And we're going to talk about that today. And identifying those breaches faster than ever. So this way you can shut it down. It's so critical that you monitor your internal infrastructure and know how simple it is to do this. So without any further ado, let's talk about A1, AI threats and defense. AI has changed the game. Hackers are now using the same tools we use for productivity to automate their attacks. The old way of protecting yourself is officially obsolete, right? A deep fake is a digital mask. It's no longer just a weird email. It's a video of a CEO asking for a wire transfer. I want you to think about that. There have been known infiltrations, especially with one going back to being 25 million with the Korean hack, right? When we talk about that, $25 million was transferred. The threat has not only escalated since then. In late 2025, we saw the AI agentic payroll breach, where an AI bot held a 45-minute troubleshooting call to steal $12 million in payroll. And just this month, not too long ago, in January 2026, we've seen the virtual kidnapping targeting family offices using a 5-second voice clone harvested from LinkedIn videos. Whether it's voice cloning managers tricking staff into proving MFA prompts or coordinated video attacks across 5 continents, the speed and scale of these incidences are unprecedented. I want you to think about that. Unprecedented. We talk about spotting the fakes. There are a lot of things that you can do to spot the fakes. But one of the things that I am resilient on and I teach all of my clients is building the human fire shield method. It's important. Human verification is the ultimate fail-safe against AI impersonation. What I tell everybody, there's a couple of different things that you can listen for and look for in a world that we live in today. So the first thing that you want to do is watch for the profile flicker, where the digital mask glitches when the person turns like 90 degrees, right? You'll see a flicker. I'm doing it now, but you're not going to see a flicker in my face. When you're dealing with clones, especially because they can get into Zoom meetings, Google Meets, whatever it might be, if you're using remote tools, whatever it is that you're using to communicate, they can do that now. And it's important that you can identify if something or someone looks real. Because again, just like I'm doing this video today, they can download my video and recreate using tools very easily of me, even cloning my voice to almost perfection. But the one thing they can't do when it comes to cloning voices and everything is watching the mouth, because our mouths don't deteriorate. On an AI cloned mouth or visual, you'll see the mouth like flicker. It'll, the teeth will stay. It'll be very something that you can actually show. The AI still struggles with teeth blur and realistic tongue movements. So those are the things that you kind of want to look at, right? What you want to listen for is like the audio flatline, a lack of natural breathing or emotional reflection. Like I can do emotional reflection and, smile and do all of that, right? But breathing, right? Like, am I talking? Are you hearing me breathe? Like, these are the things that you need to do. Ask them to turn their head sideways. I always tell them, use a safe word. Most important, before you transfer any money in this world today, use a safe word. You need to do that not only internally for a company, but externally, even with your family, right? Because Zelle, all of these tools, you can be hacked. They can spoof your telephone number. They can pretend like they're calling. They can spoof your daughter, your grandmother's, voice, and it sounds almost real. You don't know. Validate. I tell everybody, hang up and validate. Text, validate. You want to validate these things. Let's talk about smart guard behavior, right? Behavior AI is like a mall security guard who knows you. If you start acting out of character, like deleting 1,000 files at 3 a.m., the guard steps in, right? We want to make sure that we're putting up safeguards to protect our data. It's important. When we take a look at some of the things that we can do, we take a look at the telemetry collection, install an agent that logs process execution, file changes, and network connections. Those are the keys here, right? You kind of want to build a baseline profiling. Run the system in audit mode for 14 days to map standard user behavior. You can do that, right? Use your AI tools. If you didn't take our training on AI prompting and how to use those tools, go and find it. Take it. It's free. It's out there. Learn it. Implement it into your system. You want to use a heuristic analysis. Enable engine rules that flag living off the land techniques using valid tools for malicious attacks, just like we talked about, right? Because that is what's out there today. They're using valid tools to create these problems. So the same ChatGPT, OpenAI, Claude, whatever you're using, they're using, and they're just using it much better to use it against you. I always say fight a bot with a bot. You need to fight a bot with a bot. It's my motto, fight a bot with a bot. Make sure that you're implementing something that protects your system. I don't care if you have external MSP provider, an internal IT team, add a second layer of defense and use AI to audit those auditors. Put up the second defense of guardrails. That's what I always tell everybody. I offer free second looks at your entire security posture. Get a free look, a second look from an external provider if you're already using one, or even on your internal teams. Don't trust, verify. As a business owner, that is your responsibility. You're accountable for what goes on in your business, right? You want to set prevention modes to kill processes that exceed the risk score threshold that you've developed for your business, right? Everybody has a threshold of what they're going to tolerate. It's a risk tolerance. But you need to define that for yourself if you haven't, and you need to put up blockers and prevention and set that within your system. We talk about setup monitoring, right? I just talked about a couple of things that you can do. But what is an EDR? Endpoint detection and response. It's the black box flight recorder for your computer. Let it learn your normal so it can spot the abnormal, right? Select a vendor. Choose a cloud native, EDR, CloudStrike, SentinelOne, Microsoft Defender for Business. Choose something that you can put on top of your system to help monitor. It's very important. Deploy or use an RRM or group policy to push the MSI or PK agent to all of the endpoints. This is very important. There are a lot of RRM tools that are out there, right? Remote management, that's what that means, RRM. You want to take a look at them. I can't recommend any specific ones, but like there's Ninja, there's so many of them. Find one that's going to work. Okay. SaaS integration, connect with an EDR to your email, like M365 or Google via API to monitor your impossible travel. You can do that. Both of those tools offer API connections into your system. Leverage the tools that you have so you don't have to spend the extra money and keep your costs down. That's what this is all about, right? We're small businesses. A lot of small businesses are bootstrapping. Again, we're doing these web classes to teach you the DIY effects and things that you could do and turn on, tools that you have control of every day that you can turn on to help you add that extra layer of protection onto your system, right? Tune out false positives like internal dev tools to ensure only real threats trigger notifications. And again, a lot of these tools that you turn on, you set them up, they're very easy. Some of them are just with the toggle. Flip the toggle on, it's going to do the work for you. Your responsibility is to manage that, right? Oversee it. Take a look at what it's producing. Respond to any threats, any information that it gives you. That's your responsibility. So let's talk about the kill switch. What is a kill switch? It stops the bleeding. It stops the data from exfiltrating instantly or leaving the building, like I like to say. It helps prevent the breach. You know, when you use the EDR dashboard to click isolate host, this kills all traffic except the connection to the security console. And that's critical, right? You want to do a credential revocation. Reset the global admin and compromised user passwords immediately in the Active Directory, or if you're using Azure AD. These are things that you can do immediately or your technical team can turn on. You want to take a look at token invalidation. Revoke all active refresh tokens to force the hacker out of the active web sessions, right? Like these are things that you can do immediately if something comes up, right? The kill switch. This is about incident response, right? Network isolation, credential revocation, token invalidation, digital forensics, capture the RAM image before rebooting to preserve evidence, right? If you've never been through a breach or what we call an incident compromise as well, the most important thing that you need to remember is if you're told that you have a potential IOC or incident of compromise or breach and you have insurance, you need to follow that insurance protocol and contact your insurance company before you let any internal or external company touch your data at that point. Your internal team should know this by performing what we call tabletop exercises, right? But if they're not, you want to make sure that you're aware of that. Okay? You're supposed to preserve the entire state of that machine and then shut it down. Do not restart it. Do not turn it off. I see so many people do that, and I'm like, what are you doing? You don't want to do that. Okay? But these are just some tidbits. Again, if you're not sure, reach out to a partner that can help you. Someone who knows how to handle these things. Let's talk about part 2, Zero Trust Armor. Never trust, always verify. Architect. This is what I say. No one gets a pass, even if they're on the inside office. We see threats internally, but also externally, right? You could have an internal employee who is disgruntled. It's the truth. It happens all the time. So let's talk about IDP, or identity provider. Consolidate all logins into a single source of truth, right? Whether you use Azure, Coda, Google Workspace, make sure that you have your identity provider selection all consolidated. Device compliance. Configure all policies that block any device that isn't fully patched or encrypted from accessing company data. This is so important. And the one thing I will add here when it comes to zero trust, and I see it all the time, I constantly when I am doing my risk assessments for my clients, I constantly see that they're leaving a lot of these features to default and not enabling things that can easily be turned on to protect your system. Your policies are important. If you don't know what your system policies are set to, and you're relying on someone else to tell you, whether it be an IT guy, an external company, an internal company, you ultimately, again, those that are running their own businesses are responsible to know this information and question it. So question those people. Ask them to give you an audit. Tell them to conduct an audit, right? To identify those gaps and fix them. Least privilege access. We hear this all the time. The FTC, the IRS, they're big on this. Least privilege access. Audit user roles and remove local admin rights. I cannot tell you how many times I go and test a laptop, and it could be a solo entrepreneur. They're using a home-based laptop for business, which is a no-no. And in addition, they're signing on as the admin instead of separating the duties and having their own separate user role. If you have not done that, you need to today do that. You need to create a separate role and do not log in as admin to conduct any business. That is critical. Because if you're breached as an admin, you're basically giving a hacker the doors to your entire environment if they get in. When you're using a user role, they still have to figure out how to laterally move to get those permissions. Again, simple things that you could do to protect yourself. Make sure that you're doing it. Micro perimeter setup. Use Zero Trust Network Access, ZTNA tool to replace your VPN. The ZTNA, again, tool to replace your VPN, granting access to apps one by one rather than the whole network. I'm going to tell you this is critical. It's critical. I tell everybody to do it, right? ZTNA, Zero Trust Network Access. And that is important versus VPN, which gives the keys and doors to everything. VPN is very good. You should install VPN. You should be working with VPN. But I tell everybody Zero Trust. Okay? Let's talk about the handshake. Hackers know that you have passwords, right? And they also know that 100% of them are compromisable with poor hygiene. They love it. It's very easy. There's tools out there that we use, right, that can get into your system immediately if we need to. So let's talk a little bit about the secret handshake and why passwords fail. They steal billions and billions and billions of password every day, right? MFA is a second lock. OTP is a second lock. Password managers are a second lock. You want to make sure that you're not just handing over the keys to your door. MFA is required and mandated by the IRS and FTC and pretty much every other regulatory body to protect the data today. So the MF protocol selection switched from TOTP, which we call a time-based one-time password, to push notifications to increase user friction against bots. You need to be consistent with this. You need to update and be consistent. Then we talk about geo-blocking, right? In the MFA admin panel, restrict authentication attempts to only the countries where your employees physically reside. This is a very simple thing. It helps prevent a foreign country having access to your environment. These are all simple things that you can turn on yourself. You want to set the session lifetime limits. Set sign-in frequency policies to force a reauthentication every 24 hours for sensitive admin accounts. I always say set it to, no longer than 45 minutes. Have it log out. If you're a large organization, do it every 15 minutes or 5. It just depends on how big your organization is, right? But you need to set and force it to re-authenticate at a period of time, because if it's ongoing, that means you're left open. One of the biggest fails I see everybody do is they'll log into an application and they never log out. They think by clicking it out of their browser and hitting the little X, it logs them out. It doesn't. You need to physically go to your applications and software and hit log out. That is the right way to handle that. And if you're not doing it, make it a practice. Account recovery lockout. Ensure that password reset via email is disabled if the user hasn't already passed an MFA challenge, right? These are things that are easy to do. Again, implement. Let's talk about the strong MFA. Again, I am going to reinforce this. Why? Because hardening the primary entry point is critical. You want to make sure that you have policy enforcement, set the conditional access to block any login attempt that doesn't use MFA. Like, this should be a standard. One of the requirements that were passed last year with the FTC was that you actually conduct an assessment on your vendors or any third-party application or software that you have installed, and asking them, right, if they have a SOC 2, DPA, and if they comply, right, and they're not saving your data and they have the right protocols in place to protect your data because you're using their software. If you haven't done that, go review the contract and make sure that you do that, right? But we're talking MFA here, right? Disable SMS and voice call in the authentication message dashboard. You want to do this because it hardens it, right? Enable number matching to prevent MFA fatigue, accidental allow taps, right? For high-risk users, COIT, issue physical UB keys to prevent phishing entirely, right? You don't need to rely on MFA. Have them carry around a UB key. At the banks where I used to work for, we used to carry around UB keys. They're a lot safer than MFA, right? BitLocker, if you haven't had it installed, install and encrypt. I can't tell you how many times it starts with that. I'll go into a computer and they don't have BitLocker or any kind of protection to encrypt data at rest as well as data in transit. That is a fail. It's a fail. You're immediately asking for a fine, if 50,000 plus. So it's important that you understand what the risks are out there. The hotel metaphor. This is, again, I threw this in here because your Wi-Fi is a digital room for anybody to have access. I had a client. She was overseas. She took a laptop with her, which I recommend if you have your laptop and you're using it for business. If you're not protecting your laptop with VPN or, again, ZTN, right? You need to ensure that you don't access any information that's client privied, because it could be exfiltrated, especially when you're overseas in other countries. Wi-Fi, you see it happen all the time, man-in-the-middle attacks. That's how they get in. They understand that people are overseas, they're using the laptop, they're not as safe as they normally would be, and it gives them room to grow, right? They love it. So let's talk about the network fortress, right? Build a local network hardening. So what I mean by that is when you're taking a look at your systems, or you're taking a look, even if you're a solopreneur, you want to harden your systems, your network, okay, against certain things. So we say like VLAN creation. You want to kind of segment the router into a virtual LAN, what we call a private network, smart devices, and guest. Your router is the gatekeeper to people getting in, right? So If you don't do that, and you don't segment your router, everything is available to see. What I mean by that, you'll be working on your home computer, you're in your house, your Nest can see what's going on, your smart TV can see what's going on, anything like that, right? Any any kind of IoT smart device, your phone can see what's going on. It shouldn't if you have customer data on that, but it can. So you want to segment that, right? You don't want someone visiting to be able to see your private network. Like, they should not be able to do that. They should not be able to see what's going on. You want to set up firewall rules. You should have your firewalls set up as deny rule. Deny all between your IoT VLAN and your private VLAN. And when I say VLAN again, I'm talking about your router. Okay? You want to have it denied. You don't want access. You don't want cross-pollination. MAC filtering, right? Restrict the private Wi-Fi only to known. Restrict it to known. Pre-approved laptop MAC addresses. Anything else that may be sitting out there, I don't know. Turn it on. DNS filtering. Configure the router to use a secure DNS like Cloudflare to block no malware sites at the gate. Right? You can set up things on your router to protect you if you haven't already done that. And if what I'm talking to you is Greek, then again, reach out to your IT person, speak to your internal department, or reach out to someone in that world that can help you. Take a look at your systems. Have a second look. Most companies will do a second look, free analysis for you. Find them. Have them come in, take a look at your security posture. Have them come in and make sure if you're having like a new router installed, you ask that technician who's setting up that new router to change the default password and let you put in a password that you want. Don't leave it on the default password. Ask them to help you set this up, right? Tell them to segment your router for you. Tell them you want a private network, a smart device, and a guest. Segment all three. It's, again, very easy to do. Let's talk about the cloud key safety and what I'm talking about when I talk about cloud key safety. API keys are the golden keys. These are keys that help keep the interaction and transferring of data safe. Right? It's a mixed up jumble of words, letters, numbers, whatever. Right? But when systems communicate, they use these API keys to keep them safe. So this way hackers have a hard time getting through. There are different elements to the keys, right? They don't just open a door. They'll allow the holder to act as the administrator of your entire cloud if they get a hold of them. So I will tell you this, and one of the things, and GitHub just was hacked again. GitHub, thousands of keys are stolen daily because developers accidentally load them to a public code repository. If you're a developer or you're building code and you're loading that code into a public repository, you need to make sure that those keys are truncated and that your code is sanitized and you are testing that code that it doesn't identify any of that, right? It's important. You have a programmatic versus human issue, right? These keys are for machines. That's what we use the keys for, the APIs. If a human is using an API key manually, it's a security risk. You shouldn't copy, paste, and give anybody those keys. They shouldn't copy and paste. You want to make sure that they're secure at all points. If a key is hard-coded, that's a no-no. That means, and what I mean by that is if it's written into your security text, again, and saved somewhere on a repository, whether it be internal, external, that is a no-no. Anyone who sees that owns that code. They can get in to the entire system. You want to use a secret manager like AWS Secret Manager or Azure Key Vault. The code, the code asks the vault for the key only when it needs it, then forgets it immediately. So use a system. Again, most developers will know this, but I've seen so many things by conducting risk assessments that I trust no one. Again, trust but verify these things are happening. Trust and verify that your internal teams are aware of this. Trust and verify that it's not there. And that's what I tell everybody. So rotate your keys. Again, we talked about this. If a key is stolen today and you never changed it, the hacker has access forever. If you rotate your keys every 90 days, the hacker's stolen key becomes useless in the maximum of 90 days, which is a good thing. Stale key risk. Old keys are often forgotten. Rotation forces the cleanup of unused access. Rotation limits the blast radius of the leak, right? It turns a permanent catastrophic into a temporary inconvenience. So rotate, rotate, rotate. Generate a version 2 key in the console. Update the application's .evn or secret manager. Update it every 90 days, 10 days, however you feel is necessary to protect this information. Deactivation, set the old key to inactive and monitor for 24 hours. That'll help protect, again, your system to see if anybody's trying to use it, because it'll throw all kinds of threats. All kinds of alerts if somebody does have that key and is trying to use the old key. And permanent delete the old key once you verify it. Those are critical. So, SMB target. So hackers don't always use the big bank. I'll tell you that. They want the low-hanging fruit. And what I mean by this is small businesses have valuable data. Credit card information, social security, but often lack the IT staff to protect them. You're an easy target. I say this all the time. I told you in the beginning of this class, 51% of small businesses were hacked up until now in the beginning of this year alone. The cost of an average hack is about $120,000 for a small business. If you can't survive $120,000 violation, I suggest you bring somebody in who can take a look at your system and help you get a baseline. Build that cyber shield, a baseline to protect your customer data. It's critical, critical, critical. Run an external scan to see what ports you have open to the public. These are some things that you should be doing. Close RDP, remote desktop ports, and move them behind a VPN. Or again, zero trust network. These are things that you can do. Enable auto update for all OS and third-party software like Chrome, Zoom, Adobe, Microsoft, whatever it might be. So this way you're constantly getting the most recent build and patching and fixing, because there's a lot of vulnerabilities out there. I know everybody heard the big hurrah, right? And what they found, right, in old systems. It's the big hurrah in the AI world. But you know what? These vulnerabilities have been around for a long time. If you haven't patched your systems against these vulnerabilities, then boo-hoo on you. Okay? Patching is critical. Set up SPF, DKIM, and DMARC records to prevent hackers from using your domain to send spam. If you have not set this up, again, email hardening. We're talking here about patch management, attack surface reduction, and email hardening. Email hardening. Set up SPF, DKIM, DMARC. One of the things that you can set up very easily if you're using, again, Google, Workspace or whatever it might be, go in and toggle on your extra security features to monitor your email against phishing and sending you alerts. This should be automatic. Okay? Compliance isn't just about avoiding a fine, right? It's about building a legal armor that protects the owners from personal liability after a breach, right? Step-by-step compliance. Regulators don't expect you to be unhackable, but they do expect you to be reasonable. If you don't have MFA, as we talked about earlier, or an incident response, or don't know how to respond to an incident, you're negligent. And insurance often won't pay out if they feel you're negligent. So, again, what we're teaching you here today is critical to understand how it impacts your business. If your servers are encrypted, your emergency PDF is gone, you need a physical binder. Or you need to keep everything on a thumbnail. Keep it on an external hard drive. Never keep anything where somebody can get to it easily, right? Do you know your local field FBI office number? Do you know your local IRS liaison? You've got to have and document all of this information. You've got to know these numbers should you get breached, right? So, regulatory shield is only as good as what you know. And that's what I tell everybody. You need to conduct an audit on your data, where it lives. You need to conduct an audit on your AI, if it's storing data, and where it lives. You need to make sure that you have encryption turned on. You need to make sure that you have an incident plan, at least a one-pager with phone numbers and an outline of what you do in case you feel like you have a phishing or been breached or you have a problem. That's at minimum a one-pager. Print it, give it, and use it, right? Configure your backups that can't be deleted or edited for 30 days. It's called a worm storage, preventing ransomware from killing your safety. Make sure that you have backups. Make sure that those backups are encrypted. Make sure that they're kept on an external drive or, cloud, and that you can get to them should you get hacked to restore your system. You should be testing that as well. And we can go into the whole how you test it, how often. But again, if you're not testing it and you think your IT guy or your MSP provider is handling that, and you don't know if you have BCDR set up, then you need to find out, because that's critical for you surviving, right? DLP policy, enable data loss prevention in M365 Google to block the accidental emailing of SSNs and credit card numbers. You should be encrypting any information that you're sending. Zip V7Z. And if you don't know how to do it, Google it, because it'll tell you. Do not be sending any information over your email that has not been encrypted and zipped, and probably password protected, depending on what it is. Vendor due diligence, send a 5-question security survey to every vendor. We talked about this earlier, right? If they don't use MFA, then they're your biggest risk. Under the FTC mandates, again, you need to identify your vendors, how their infrastructure is set up so you are protected. SOC 2 reports, right? Questionnaires. If you're not sure, again, engage someone who can help you. Once a year, pretend your main server is gone and see how long it takes to find the recovery key. Do a 1-hour drill. Test your system. Pretend like you have no access. Restore your backup. It's called the tabletop exercise. Implement it. It'll help you. You'll thank me. So let's talk about the final shield check, right? We talked a lot today about a lot of different things that you can do. The difference between a theory, though, and a fortress, it's a checklist. This is a summary for your executive team or yourself to prove you're taking action, or an auditor. Build a checklist for yourself. Validate that you have done these things. MFA for everyone. It's not just for the CEO. It's for your internal and external. If you have remote workers, and I see this always, you should have them sign something that guarantees that they're using MFA, that they're using VPN, and that their systems are encrypted, because that protects you. If they get breached and somehow that hacker makes its way into you or breaches your customer information on their system, you're still responsible. That will help you protect. Put it in your NDA, your contract. You want to validate that they have done this. Okay? Endpoint logic, we talked about EDR in every laptop currently reporting back to the dashboard. If it's been offline for 30 days, kill it. If you have people that have left your company, the law says that you must terminate their access within 24 hours. You have 24 hours to do this. The 24-hour rule. If a device is stolen, you must be able to remote wipe it within 60 minutes. This is the 2026 standard. If you're not following these rules, you're out of compliance. If your team is not following these rules, you're out of compliance. If you're a remote worker or seasonal worker or contract worker and not following these rules, you're out of compliance. And I say that because it's important you understand that. So let's see if we have any questions. I'm going to go to the comments and see if we have any questions today. So I do have a question. One of the questions is, what is one of the biggest threats that we can see? I'm sorry, what does it say? What is one of the biggest threats that we can... I apologize, and this is coming from Alan. What is one of the biggest threats that we can... I'm not sure what that word is, that we can, I guess, limit ourselves against? Maybe that's the word. So I'm going to take it in that context. One of the biggest threats, again, that we talked about is the inaction of people to verify what's happening within their systems. And I'll say that, right? People, the human element is so important in protecting against a security threat, any kind of threat, whether it's cybersecurity, physical, it doesn't matter, right? The processes that you have in place, the processes that you've built, not only for your systems, but to protect your company, whether it be, a physical environment or a remote environment, those things are your responsibility as a business owner to validate constantly with your teams, with the people that work for you, but you, most importantly, the people that run those companies. You may have other people trickling underneath you, but ultimately it all comes up to the top. Who's running that company? Just like in my company, I trust but I verify. There are things that we constantly audit, that we look at, that we make sure we have written procedures for them. They all could be one pages, right? But monthly we'll check this, weekly we'll check that, right? Quarterly we'll check this. It's important that you have a process built in to help you protect it. That is probably the biggest threat, that people don't have that, and they're not following through if they do. They may have all these wonderful written procedures, policies, whatever it might be, but if you're not actually testing to those policy and procedures and the things that you say you are doing, then you have failed, especially in the eyes of an auditor, whether it be internally or externally, right? Worked for banks for over 30 years, have sat with OCC, I've sat with NCUA auditors, I've sat with a lot of different external auditors. And I'll tell you, the first thing that they look at is what is in writing. What are you saying that you have documented that you do? And then they test to that. And that's where they find the gaps. And if you can't prove it, then again, you're at risk. You're putting your company at risk and you're putting everything else at risk. I hope that answered your question. I don't have any other questions out there today. So I want to thank everybody. But one of the things that I will share with everybody today, and again, I want to thank anybody who's joining or anybody who comes across this that listens to this in the future. I am offering for all of you to do a second look at your cybersecurity posture. You could book a 15-minute call with me today, right? At www.cardinalsbites.com/shield. Book it. Again, I open this up usually to about 20 participants. If you book today while we're here, on the webinar, just DM me in LinkedIn and let me know that you booked via the webbing class that we're doing today. Just way I can code you when my team or myself reaches out to you. So this way we know that you're going to get a free second look assessment on your security posture. I do want to thank everybody today. And if there's no other questions, I'm going to be letting everybody go and giving you back some time. Have a great day. Thank you, everyone.